Isekai is a very popular and frankly overused genre in anime, so much that many regard it as the worst genre to find good titles. And that's fair because a lot of the Isekai anime source materials are light novels, and they are easy to sniff out. The title is often a dead giveaway. Then when you're actually watching it, there's the long dialogue pieces from characters or from the narrator and a lot of monologuing. And while it is important to make notes of what's going on in a new world, its own rules, character development of the main and support roster, it is very difficult to translate that into anime format and entice viewers. Much more difficult than going from manga to anime, where the manga is literally a storyboard before the studio get to the stage of creating their own storyboard. And because there are so many isekai stories out there, a lot of them tend to be very similar to one another. And I get it, most Japanese people have black hair, but writers need to stop making their main character have black spiky hair. At this rate, the meme is never going to die. That is the first thing I'm going to give Mushoku Tensei props for in this video. The main character Rudeus does not have spiky black hair. He did have black hair in his previous life because he's Japanese. Go figure. Before I delve any deeper, I just want to throw in a little Easter egg question about the series. In the 24th Mushoku Tensei episode, mainly featuring Eris and Cliff, who is the woman that Eris saved along with the child from the kidnappers that turned out to be Cliff's teachers? It's a spoiler for anime onlys for sure. That's why the answer will be revealed at the very end of the video. Alright, back to the main topic. Mushoku Tensei manages to break away from the tropes that are stuck to isekais, but as well as mentioning the things that make this show so great, I'm gonna get out the X factor. And it's not the one unanimous thing the fans adore about the show. No, it's the one thing that's so bad that 99% of the viewers that stopped watching probably did so because of this reason: the main character himself. While it's understandable that there are horrible people like this in the world, it's simply a lot to ask the viewer to accept that the protagonist, usually labelled the hero of the story, is just a scumbag in one of the most, if not the most deplorable ways possible. And yes, despite how much I love this show and the light novel, I always get the thought in my head that says, do you really love a show that has a diddler for a main character? And that's pretty much the reason for the title of the video. No matter how much you like the show, there is always that element that can't be forgotten, even when he eventually gets better. And there are always going to be questions about the story the more you read into that specific aspect of immorality. But this is not what the video is about. It's about why, despite all of that X factor that is full of distastefulness, you should see this show through. But I know in some of you lot's cases, it's why you're gonna miss out on possibly one of the best isekai power fantasies to date. While our despicable main character is probably the worst in terms of immoral habits, among the main cast, he's definitely not the only one with a dark shadow within them. In fact, everyone, apart from the literal children, have a secret or skeleton in their closet, or a shred of regret about their actions in the past, or want to do better because of their shortcomings or past sins. The main adults of the show I can think of that are the exception are Zenith, the all-forgiving, can-do-no-wrong protagonist's mother, and Sauros, Eris's grandfather, who is landlord to a large region of the most powerful human kingdom. Like politicians and leaders of the world today, worry and regret are feelings they cannot afford to demonstrate given their positions, or at least to the public. In the anime, there are of course moments that are streamlined versions of the corresponding light novel segments that focuses on other characters, but the anime production team found ways to somewhat convey the characters' thoughts and feelings through 10-second scenes that the light novel can do with, say, a full paragraph. If I was to pull up an example, it would be either Ghislaine or Ruigid's attitude to Rudeus, though Ruigid's thoughts are easier to notice since there's more screen time, so I'll go with Ghislaine. Ghislaine gains knowledge of Rudeus' talent in Paul's letter to Philip, his cousin and Eris's father. Paul is the same man that Ghislaine despises back when they were in the same adventuring party, and Rudeus' feats, admittedly largely through his really cool buff of retaining his memories of his previous life, while obtained through hard work, are almost absurd. While she may not exactly be smart enough to be very suspicious, she definitely must have held at least some disbelief. Yet she still readily accepted Paul's deal of Rudeus teaching her reading, maths and magic in exchange for her being Rudeus' sword instructor. She even took the instructor gig as a challenge, even ridiculing Paul and Roxy's inability to teach Rudeus any further. Also, whatever disbelief she may have had before was all dismissed after Rudeus managed to hold off the kidnappers long enough for her to finish them off. Again, there's a section for Ghislaine's perspective and a bit of introspection, and she holds Rudeus in high esteem, despite the predator nature similar to his father. You don't get that in the anime, but there are a few signs that demonstrate her newfound respect for Rudeus. Her cooperation with Rudeus in him learning beast language, and her graciously accepting Rudeus's beginner wand after graduating from his lessons, are the type of subtle character moments signalling the state of the relationships built you don't get to see in a lot of light novel based anime. So I'm not going to argue if someone says that it's a generic fantasy world. It's got a world, good start, that has various countries in it, kingdoms, regions, and there are races living in this space other than humans. You got demons, elves, beasts, and others that I'm not going to spoil. Mushoku Tensei manages to piece the exposition together by feeding the viewer with breadcrumbs that never seems to end. You are on this journey along with Rudeus, who, like any other child, or quite frankly anybody learning something new, won't be fed everything about a particular topic in such a short space of time. The brain doesn't retain things like that, unfortunately. Then there's the power system. There is a sword and magical combat system, each with their own types and tiers. 3 main sword schools and 10 conventional magic schools. And no, I don't mean the number of actual schools in the world. I mean an area of combat or magic an individual or an institute can tap into and later specialize in, just like in any other education system. The sword and conventional magic schools have 7 tiers, with elemental or beginner being of course the first tier that everyone starts off with, and the top tier being called God or Divine. And you'll definitely hear about those titles. I could go into a little more about them, but I'd actually end up being here all day. The art is definitely in the upper echelon, although the quality was at its peak in the very first 11 episodes. At that point, this was Studio Bind's first and only project. Their next project that wasn't Mushoku Tensei is a show called Now I'm Your Sister, which aired winter of last year. Manabu Okamoto, the director in charge of the first season, took more of a backseat in the second core. Hirako Hirano, someone who was part of the season 1 project, took over the reins as director for the first core of season 2, but he's not in any of the main staff credits for this core. I'll admit, that's a little worrying. Whether or not this starting trend of changing directors will continue is too early to tell, but I'll be more than satisfied if there isn't a significant drop in animation quality from the last core and that the level stays the same through to the end of the story. Furthermore, due to where the story is at with the next load of episodes, I'm convinced that whatever budget Bind had for the whole season, the second core got the larger proportion. Though it would be wishful thinking to expect the consistency of the quality to reach the levels of the first 11 episodes of the story, I would love it if at least the peak moments did, especially if the music and sound staff managed to produce another classical style soundtrack that has a title that can not only fit but also reinforce almost every scene. What I've done on the channel with the most recently aired Classroom of the Elite season, I'm gonna do with Mushoku Tensei. That is added light novel context to key moments that I deem worthy, but each vid representing the volume number, not the episode number. However, the next vid won't be out for another few weeks. I'm also open to more video ideas so long as they don't end up being spoilers for what's to come. This is an anime channel, so I want to respect the anime onlys as much as possible. And weekly quizzes will be back for this show. Look forward to those. This is where I'll leave things for now. If you enjoyed the vid, please leave a like. It helps these vids get seen. Have a blessed one, folks. See ya. Oh, and the woman that Eris saved back in the 24th episode was Therese, Zenith's younger sister and Rudeus's auntie.